What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of the Desai Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, Norman Desai, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Desai Guys, Tad Desai. And Tad, still going headstrong into all the fantasy stuff. It's not stopping anytime soon.
No, it is not. We're just getting going. Literally, we are, as of recording, a day away from the first preseason game. So, we got a month of preseason to go. We got a lot of fantasy preview stuff to cover, but we are now done with our position rankings. So we are moving on. I wonder how many people get that reference.
Very true. We're done with all of our position rankings, but that doesn't mean you can't go back and listen to all that great content that we dropped, because there's a lot of useful information in there to help you with, planning your draft strategies after the draft is over, helping you with some waiver wire decisions too. We gave you some names also on there that may not get drafted, but guys that you want to keep on your radar as far as as soon as the season starts to pick up, they could be names that you want to be at the top of your waiver wire additions so you can sort of get ahead of the competition in your various leagues for sure.
Speaking of waiver wires, I want to give a very special shout out to JBear22, I believe it was, commented on our Instagram post, what do we think of Zach Charbonnet? I'll shorten down my answer, but basically I said, I don't think he's worth drafting, but very interesting name to keep an eye on the waiver wire. So like Amir said, those are one of the many, many interesting names we brought up to keep an eye on. But if you need specialized, individualized attention like Jay Bear went for, please change your name. I feel so weird saying that.
You just call it Jay. That's our good friend Jay.
That's a good friend Jay. Yeah. All right, there you go. Well, in that case, Jay. See, that feels much better.
Yeah, there
you go. You ask for help, you get it. So if you guys want that, you see our socials right down there. If you are listening on the podcast, it is at Amir Desai 23, at Tad Desai 94, and at the Desai Guys on Twitter, and it is also at the Desai Guys on Instagram. So hit us up if you need individualized help, because a lot of drafts are starting up soon. We're now in August. So, yes, I'm happy the ball is still rolling, so let's keep it rolling.
100%. So, yeah, even though we're done with the position rankings, that doesn't mean we're done with fantasy content. In today's episode, Tad, we're going to be talking about fantasy football bounce back candidates. Now, what we mean by this is just, kind of in the same vein of like a comeback player, essentially, but essentially guys that, had a down year last year because of whether they didn't perform, they got hurt, maybe it was just a scheme thing, just whatever it was, they didn't have the best fantasy season, but there's a lot more promise heading into 2023 because some of those factors have changed. They're healthy, new offense, new team, what have you, new coaching staff. So they have a good chance to sort of reclaim being fantasy relevant heading into 2023. So each of us have two candidates that we want to suggest here as far as, good chances to sort of make that bounce back here in 2023 to be relevant pieces as you're planning your draft strategy here. So Tad, as always, I'm going to pass it to you here first. Who is one of those guys that you like to sort of make that bounce back from 2022 to have a successful 2023?
Like you said, as always, you always just hand the ball off to me. I'm always the leadoff hitter here. For some reason.
Gotta start strong.
You flatter me. But, much like a leadoff.
Few nice things I'll say about you.
Very, very few.
I like to pepper it in.
Oh, my God. Once a week. Unlike a leadoff hitter, though, I'm actually going to swing for the fences on this one. I'm going for the home run.
The power swing like Joey Gallo.
Exactly. Either this is going beyond the fences or I'm going to strike out and everyone's going to be like, what is this man doing? How about JK Dobbins? For a bounce back candidate.
This is very much, very much, I can very much see that where it's like this could be an absolute home run of a pick, or you could go down swinging hard with this pick as well. So very, very like black and white with JK Dobbins for sure. I feel the same way, but you think he's going to bounce back. So I want to hear that.
I mean, so he finishes the 48th best running back last season, which makes sense because he only played in 7 games. But in 3 of those 7 games, he did have over 10 points. So he definitely still has it when he plays. It's just, can he find that consistency both in staying on the field and being, productive while he is on the field? I think he can because, I mean, look, you look at, and this sounds really bad, but you look at his rookie year 2 years ago, he had about 800 yards and 9 touchdowns. That was his rookie year with a much bigger split of a backfield. And so I think that now that, and I know people are going to go, well, they just signed Melvin Gordon. I think that was more of an insurance policy than anything. I don't see that as like a split carry situation. So I think that if he is healthy, he is more than capable of reproducing those stats and even like going above those stats. I'm talking like, just over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. So I think the biggest problem with him is, and look, I will say this, is that Jim Harbaugh himself said he's still not playing out the, is it Jim? John? I always get mixed up. Damn it. It's one of the twins got mixed up. I know they're not actually twins before people start yelling at me. They might as well be. The Harbaugh said that, he's even concerned about the fact that Dobbins is not out there playing yet in the preseason. Like, I think the quote was something like, he's got to get out there soon or something like that. But from all the comments from Dobbins himself, he's close to ready. So I think that's just this typical like beginning of preseason kind of worry that everyone has. I say keep a close monitor over it the next couple months the next month or so.
Jeez.
And don't do that. Yeah, whole season. But I think if he's good to go by mid-August, this is a guy you can get in the late rounds or even on the waiver wire. Speaking of the waiver wire, that could honestly end up being a very solid flex option for you. And like finding a guy like that in the last 3 rounds is very, very difficult.
I think the thing that worries me with JK Dobbins is just that ever since his rookie year, he's sort of been dealing with injuries every single season. Like, we anticipated his return last season. He came back. He played, I think 2-3 games, if I remember correctly.
And then he came back from the injury. Yeah, he played 3.
Yeah, and then he got hurt again, and then he was sort of like used sparingly throughout the rest of the season, if I remember correctly, too. So it's just like over the past couple of seasons since his rookie year, it's just hard to trust him staying on the field. And something that Baltimore likes to do is something that, pretty much a lot of teams are sort of going to now. It's not just like, San Francisco. It's not just Miami. It's not just, Washington for a period too. It's just like they're using that running back by committee approach. And even though Dobbins is sort of the guy that you would want out of that backfield, if he's healthy, you still wonder whether Gus Edwards is going to chip in a little bit. You look at Melvin Gordon sign, like he's going to take a little bit of some of the carries as well. So it's like, even though if JK Dobbins is healthy, I'm just wondering if they're not just going to give him a majority of the carries either. Like they're really going to divvy up the carries split among all the guys. Then also you had to look at the fact that Lamar Jackson's a running quarterback. So, I mean, automatically he's going to take a lot of the rushing attempts as well. So,
but we're also assuming Lamar Jackson plays the most of the season, and that's an even more massive assumption. I mean, you want to talk swinging for the fences.
No, you make a fair point there too, but just I'm saying that when he's in the offense, he's sort of their prime, like he's going to move the offense down the field, whether through its legs or through the arm, right? Or through his arm. But just, I think the problem that I have with Dobbins is just it's hard for me to trust him to stay on the field. So if he could sort of make it through the season and stay healthy pretty much the entire season, maybe he could miss a game or two, obviously, but just that's the thing that sort of worries me over the past 2 seasons. Just like he hasn't been able to stay on the field consistently. And so that's led me to trust some of the other guys. And maybe that's also led to the Ravens offense or trusting some of the other guys as well. That even once Dobbins is in the offense, they're going to sprinkle in a lot of the other guys as well to sort of keep that load off of him. And obviously that sort of led to the big conversation as far as like, why aren't we paying for running backs anymore? This is sort of that situation that we're sort of playing into as to why that sort of conversation is happening, right?
All right, so your first guess, you swinger for the fences or you going a little safer?
I'm I'm going a little bit safer with this one.
That's okay. All right. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
I think this is a pretty obvious pick, but I still think we need to sort of make this pick because I think it's very likely that where he's being drafted, which I'll get to, I think he's going to outperform where he's going to be drafted. That's Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets, the new quarterback.
Wow. All right. You're not even swinging for the fences. You're just like bunting.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm just trying to get on base. This is like, Luis Arias, his percentage as far as getting on base, that's it. If you're not as big a baseball fan, you probably wouldn't get that one.
Is he still batting 400? Because he was up there for a while.
He was close, but he sort of hit a little bit of a skid. So
now
I think he's like at 380 or something like that.
Oh, well, now he sucks. No, 380. Come on, man.
Exactly. It's still sensational, but yeah, I don't think he's entertaining that 400. I think there's a little bit of a skid there. But anyways, let's get to Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets here. Subject of
also you can't hit us up for fantasy baseball advice too, by the way.
That is very true. That's very true. But yeah, subject of Hard Knocks, the New York Jets. I think it took. I remember, Tad, we were sort of talking about this, when it was going to happen. We were not alone, just how long it was going to take for him to leave the Packers to join any team. Obviously, there's all the rumors about him joining the Jets. It eventually happened, and so now he's a member of the Jets after this offseason. You look at his last season with the Green Bay Packers, Rodgers put up the following numbers: 3,695 passing yards, 25 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and 1 rushing touchdown, which totaled to 239.2 fantasy points in PPR leagues, which ranked him at 13th at the position, surprisingly. So he actually did pretty well. But I think just the biggest thing is that now he's going to a New York Jets offense that's just a lot more. The cupboard is well stocked here for him to do whatever he wants in the kitchen here. Also, you have to look at the fact that even though he had a quote unquote bad year last season with Green Bay, like I said, he still finished 13th and he almost made the top 12, which is like, if you play in a 10-man league or a 12-man league, that's a guy that you're sort of looking at as a streaming option or possibly as a starter for your team as well. But like I said, he joins the Jets offense, reunites with his former offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. And Tad, I don't know if you know this, but Nathaniel Hackett was his offensive coordinator when he won back-to-back MVP awards. So, I mean, this is sort of a big thing for him to reunite with that offensive coordinator, sort of to reestablish that sort of relationship, familiarity. Obviously, the concepts, the language, the audibles, all those sorts of things is a lot easier when you have a guy that you worked with before. Also, you obviously have to look at the upgrade as far as the receivers and the skill players. I mean, going from Christian Watson, who I like, but he's nowhere near like the talent that I think Garrett Wilson is at right now. You'll look at Nicole Hardman's a good deep threat. Obviously, Corey Davis, I think is a very good supplemental piece too. You hand the ball off to Breece Hall, who's hopefully going to stay healthy the entire season. Also, Michael Carter, who I'm a huge fan of, and the rookie out of Pitt, Israel Abanikanda, I like a lot as well. He could probably be sprinkled in too. And then also, yeah, he's no longer there. And Dental Mips, nope, he's not there anymore either. But it doesn't matter because you already still have such good options there. And let's also not forget that the fact that they brought over from the Green Bay Packers, Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb are carrying over too. So he has some familiarity working with those guys too. So I mean, it's just clearly he's got so many weapons that he could do whatever he wants with the offense.
I'm going to interrupt you because there's no way all the receivers you just named make the roster. Who's the surprise cut? Because somebody is going to be cut by the end of this month.
Honestly, Corey Davis, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it's Corey Davis.
I think just unfortunately he just hasn't performed ever since he signed that big contract with the New York Jets. I think he had one successful season in Tennessee before he signed that contract.
Oh, in Tennessee. I thought you were going to say one successful season in New York. I was like, hey, no. Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. But I'd probably say the reason he got that contract with New York is because he had a successful season in Tennessee. So, but yeah, it would surprise me if he gets cut. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they decide to keep him too. Like, just give Aaron Rodgers every option that he has there. So, I mean, we'll see. But just you look at that, you look at, like I said, reunited with Nathaniel Hackett. I think this is just, it's a perfect situation. I know a lot of people a little bit worried as far as just like, changing to the bigger, market in New York. He's going to get a lot more attention on him. I already brought it up. They're going to be a subject of Hard Knocks this year. So it's like, is that going to be a distraction? I mean, it's just like, I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. I think he's going to be able to put all of that aside. He's a proven quarterback in this league. Like I said, back-to-back MVPs as far as 2020 and 2021. So this is recent. It's not even like a long time ago either. So, I mean, this guy is a proven quarterback. He's a veteran. He knows how to win. He's going to be able to do it with all these weapons here. He's currently being drafted, Tad, as the 12th quarterback off the board. Yeah, and that's why I said that.
What?
That's why I like him as a bounce back candidate, because even though he's being drafted as the 12th quarterback off the
My
board,
notepad. I need to write this down.
I think he's going to jump like at least 5 spots. I think he's going to finish at least in the top 7. Very much has a good shot to finish in the top 5. But like I said, because he doesn't have that running ability, that's what worries me about finishing in the top 5. I very much think he could finish in the top 7 at least, though, there. So, yeah, 100% Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, with the quote-unquote bad year that he had last year, he's 100% going to bounce back this year with the New York Jets. Like I said, put himself back in the conversation of being a premier quarterback in fantasy leagues.
So I'm looking at our Instagram account at the Desai Guys right now. You currently have Aaron Rodgers ranked as your number 8 quarterback. I actually like him more than you at number 7.
But you also had him as where he's going to finish, right? I have him as far as like how I've targeted, right? So, like I said, it still falls in line with sort of what I'm sort of laying down. Whereas, like, yeah, he may get targeted a lot later, but he should finish in that top 7. So, I 100% agree with you.
Okay, I'm going to, you know what? If you want to see Amir's full rankings, go to our Instagram account, but I'll start number 5. So, number 5, you have Justin Herbert, which, by the way, we need to talk about that ranking for Herbert. But at number 5, you have Justin Herbert. Number 6, you have Lamar Jackson. Number 7, Trevor Lawrence. Number 8, Justin Fields. Number 9, Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, the only guy I would draft I would draft Aaron Rodgers over that you ranked higher than him, there we go, is Trevor Lawrence. I actually like Aaron Rodgers more than Trevor Lawrence. But like you said, I think right now he is OLI, outside looking in, of the top 5. That's where I think he'll finish. Which is why I have him at 7. So the fact that he's being drafted as a solid second string quarterback is absolutely insane to me. Like you said, I mean, think about the conversation we just had. What's been the biggest complaint about Aaron Rodgers over the last couple of years of his career? He has no weapons. Now he has 1,000 weapons. So there's no reason for him not to do well. And like you say, again, with the familiarity of that system, there's just the stars are aligning. And the last thing I'll say about your pick, because I do like this pick, it's a little bit of it's like barely bounce back, right? Because 13's not bad, it's not great.
It's a safer pick, but I still think you need to say it, right?
It counts. I'll count it. But I still like it because it's one of those things that it's again, it's the way we kind of did this episode, the way I did this episode at least, was what's a guy that you can get anywhere pretty much after the 5th round that can become a solid starter or a consistent starter on your roster. Aaron Rodgers is 100% capable of doing that. And apparently is going past the 5th round now. So that definitely fits.
Oh, easily.
Yeah. And can we stop with this whole Hard Knocks being distraction thing? Like, I don't know. I'm not saying you believe it. I'm not saying you believe it. Because it is a very common thread. Every year is like, oh, will this be a distraction for the team? I don't listen to it, but I imagine New York sports radio is just having a field day with that conversation. But what is a field day, by the way?
I don't know.
That's a great question. I should look that
one up later.
Yeah. But you know what you shouldn't do if you decide to become a football player? Be uncomfortable with the camera. There's people are surrounded by cameras for 2/3 of the year. And if you're a free agent, like all year. So if you're made that uncomfortable by cameras and having to sit down for an extra half hour after practice for an interview, well, then you should be a goddamn football player. I'm sorry. But like, it's just, the distraction. Oh no, they need to interview my wife. And like just get out of here.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, you have to play that card, even though it may not be a distraction.
Here's my biggest concern with the Hard Knocks thing is that HBO is going to leave a camera on the field. Aaron Rodgers is going to trip over it, break his leg, and that would be the most Jets thing to ever happen.
Hey, don't put
not saying I wish that to happen.
Don't put it out there.
I'm just saying. Then Hard Knocks becomes a distraction. Other than that, they're not a distraction. And actually, historically, I've said this before, but historically, if you go back and look, most of the teams that have had Hard Knocks have actually made the playoffs that year. Not all of them, but most of them.
Interesting.
Not including the midseason. Both seasons, the midseasons have been disasters. The first one was the Colts. The last year was the Cardinals.
I was going to say something about that, but I was like,
"Oh, you shut."
Unless we talk about your Colts, I think maybe a little bit better at this time.
I'm getting nervous. I'm buying the hype. I normally talk this down, but I watched some Anthony Richardson highlights on Twitter today. Ooh, he's looking good.
And you didn't want to.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to
believe me.
Of course, it's looking good. No one's actually tackling him. This is why I don't. We need football already. When I'm buying into Anthony Richardson, we need football.
Fair.
I need my fix, man.
So like we talked about, we both had two guys that we would discuss. So who's the second guy that you want to discuss as a potential bounce back candidate for the upcoming season?
It was funny because I was actually kind of struggling to find two because last year actually shook out. I know people are going to be like, well, yeah, no, duh. But last year shook out pretty fairly, in my opinion. With that, I mean, there was no guy that really stood out to me where I was like, oh, jeez, like you finished there? Like, that's very surprising. I mean, even like Aaron Rodgers 13, I was like, yeah, I would say he was like the 13th best quarterback last year. I think that's pretty fair. So I was really struggling to find a second guy. I was kind of like scrolling through these names, and I saw one name. I was like, whoa. I know you had it down here. I didn't think you had that down over here. Our boy, Keenan Allen. Our boy being LAFB's boy. He had a bad year. He finished as the 40th ranked receiver in half PPR leagues last year. 40th.
Yeah.
Not 14th, 40th.
That's 4-0, yeah.
4-0.
Pretty bad.
That's crazy. So I think he's an easy candidate for a bounce back year because, again, same thing I said with JK Dobbins, 40th, while surprisingly low. I'm not surprised he finished outside the top 20 considering he only played in 10 games. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here. I feel like a lot of people are talking about him as if he is an injury-prone receiver. Are you getting that feel too, or is that just me?
With Keenan Allen?
Yeah.
I think early in his career, he was sort of being labeled with that.
Is that why I'm doing that?
Yeah, I think because he'd see the field, then he'd miss a lot of time. Then he'd see the field again, he'd miss a lot of time. I think he missed an entire season, if I remember correctly, too. And if you look at his last season, he played in only 10 games last season, too. So that's part of the reason as to why he finished 40th. But just still, it's just like, I think he sort of tried to shake off what he had earlier in his career. And he just hasn't been able to shake that off yet. Okay. And then, having only played in 10 games last year, it's sort of hard to shake that off, right?
All right, I did forget about his injury injury woes earlier in his career, so maybe that's why that talk is coming back. That makes more sense because, I mean, like you said, let's look at last year where he only played 10 games. All right, well, that's this little picture. Let's zoom this out to the big picture. There we go. Scale. There we are. But scaling is very hard when you're not.
This is why you're an English teacher. You're not in design because
God, no,
that was bad.
Actually, at my new school, we have a graphic design class, and that teacher, I'm like, dude, teach me things. But anyway, let's look at the big pictures because 4 out of the last 6 seasons, he's played a full season. And the one, obviously we have last season where he missed a lot, but the other one where he did not play a full season, he only missed 2 games. So it's not like you miss a ton. See, that's how bad I am at like scaling is when I did 2, one of my fingers was out of frame. But so I think his consistency is not a big worry of mine at all. And then you look at what he's done, in those seasons where he has been healthy, he's finished with less than 1,000 yards only once since 2017. Almost, not all, because there was one season where he finished just below, but almost every season since then, he's finished with at least 1,100 yards. Touchdown numbers vary pretty wildly. It depends on who else they have. But let's talk about who else they have. The Chargers have at receiver. They have Mike Williams, who is Mike Williams. We all know he's good at this point. And, I mean, we talk about training camp hype. My boy, Quentin Johnston, he is looking good, man. I don't know if you've been seeing some of the highlights coming out of camp, but he is the real deal, I am telling you. So, I mean, there are times where, there are legitimate concerns where having 2 other good receivers opposite of you, eating too much of your production away. But and that will happen. I'm not going to say that's not going to happen, but I don't think it will happen enough to like significantly impact his fantasy value. In fact, I think that will actually increase his fantasy value because now he's not going to get doubled up on because Mike Williams is out for 8 games. And let's assume he is like he normally is. Well, like I said, QJ is looking pretty good. So he basically has like an insurance policy on not giving double coverage for 3/4 of the game. So I really think that Keenan Allen, while he will not, I don't think he'll be a top 10, probably not top 12. I think he is an absolute lock for top 20. So I'm seeing like a 20 spot jump here. And again, I think that because of his injury history, and some people, I do this a lot. Instead of looking at projected stats, I don't know. Actually, remember, that's a good question. I don't know how you do it, but when I'm drafting, I don't look at projected stats. because I feel like the leagues always, no matter where you draft from, ESPN, Yahoo, DraftKings, whatever, BetOnline. I don't think BetOnline does fantasy football, but they should. But either way, like I always feel like they overrate things. So what I do is I always go to last year's stats. And if you're like me and you do that, Keenan Allen's going to slip. And I think not a lot, but I think a fair amount of people go the same route I do. But yeah, real quick, what route do you go?
I do take a little bit of a look at the projected rankings too, just to see like.
I mean, it's fair. Yeah, I take it to account.
Because definitely, depending on the platform that you play on, they do take into account the league settings that you're working with. So it's like they do try to adjust the algorithm accordingly so that you can sort of see numbers based on your league scoring in case you have some weird scoring format that's not standard. So it does help you to an extent, but yeah, you sort of need to take that with a grain of salt because I mean, it's just like sometimes they project rookies to have such inflated numbers and you're like, based on this offense, I don't think they're going to see the ball that much or be involved that much. So it's like these numbers sort of do not affect me at all. But then you also can't look at last year's numbers with the rookie, right? So that's where you sort of need to rely on the projections. And that's like, okay, this is sort of something that you sort of need to look at. So you sort of exactly like you sort of laid it out, where you sort of need to go with the projections to an extent, but then you also need to look at last year's stats too to really give you a good picture as far as like what can you really expect from a player as you're approaching them in fantasy drafts for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right about the inflating rookie numbers, I think, because people forget Trevor Lawrence was like the third coming. I guess Andrew Luck was the second coming. So Trevor Lawrence was like the third coming out of college. And I'm trying to remember. It was like 38 touchdowns ESPN projected him to have. I was like, what the hell fantasy land are you living in? Get Fantasyland? There you go. But speaking of Fantasyland, thoughts on Keenan Allen?
Yeah, I think everything you laid out is pretty good. I think the biggest thing that I think some people may be worried about is exactly like you said, the injury report there. And so you look at his past seasons, exactly like you laid out from 2017, he's had over 1,000 yards every single season, with the exception of one where he had 992. So I mean, 8 yards.
That was it. I mentioned.
It's not that bad.
I meant to mention that. I meant to mention that.
Things on top of that, Tad, that I want to add in here is that every single season he's had over 100 receptions, with the exception of one where he had 97. So that's also consistent. Then he also has scored at least 6 touchdowns in every single season as well since then as well. So, I mean, this is a guy that when he's healthy, he's very much a dependable piece. And yeah, you look at last year, he missed, 7 games or whatever it is. I was 17 games ago. He played 10, but he was still able to finish with, 66 receptions, 752 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's still dependable in the 10 games they play. Like, those are pretty good numbers. And so if you extrapolate that over the course of the entire 17 game schedule, those are numbers that you want from wide receiver one. And then, yeah, we've already talked about this so much, but I mean, it's such a crucial factor. It's going to be such a big game changer for this offense. But Kellen Moore is really going to be a little bit more aggressive. He's really going to unlock more of Justin Herbert compared to what we've seen. And what we've seen has already been so good. But now it's like taking that next step. It's like Justin Herbert in this offense, he's going to be able to take more from him and get more out of him. It's just going to be so beneficial, not just for Justin Herbert, obviously, but all the receivers, including Keenan Allen.
I think the key stat that you laid out, and you laid out a lot of good stats there, was 4 touchdowns last year. I think that's why Keenan Allen finished so much lower than everyone else would expect, is because, like you said, I mean, 700 yards, how many receptions again?
66 or so.
66 or okay, we'll go, 65. We'll just call it 65. So 65 catches for 700 yards. I mean, that's a pretty solid, like, wide receiver number 2, stat line, except for the 4 touchdowns. So I think if he gets those touchdowns up by another 4, if he can just catch 4 more, which if he plays again, 4, 6, or 7 more games, that's not really that tall of an order. So I can't see Keenan Allen, like, I don't see his career declining quite yet. Now, we can have that conversation maybe next offseason, definitely 2 off seasons from now, if he's even still a Charger at that point. But I think that the career decline is not ready to start quite yet. I think that's a big reason why they took Quentin Johnston, was to kind of put that off for a bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just add more to this offense. And so, yeah, they're going to be pretty good on offense. So, yeah, that's an offense that you want to target as far as fantasy leagues are concerned, for sure.
So excited for QJ. It's going to be so good.
I like how you're sort of downplaying Anthony Richardson hype, and now you're sort of all aboard the QJ hype here.
Dude, QJ is going to be offensive rookie of the year.
Oh, dear Lord, you need to stop. But I'm going to go with my second candidate here, and I'm going to stick with the wide receiver position here. I'm going to go to the Dallas Cowboys former team, and I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks, who is now a member of the Dallas Cowboys. So Cooks is staying in the state of Texas, but he's moving from Houston now to Dallas. And
that's an upgrade. That is an upgrade.
It is 100% an upgrade.
Both team-wise and definitely city-wise.
Okay, I can't speak for city-wise, but team-wise, I think that's definitely a better move for him.
And I mean this both team-wise and city-wise. Fuck you, Houston.
So you look at the season that Cooks had last season there in Houston. He had 57 receptions, 699 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns with total 145.6 fantasy points in PPR leagues, and that ranked him, Tad, 49th at the position. So yeah, this was clearly a very
Keenan Allen.
Yeah, this was clearly a very down year for Brandon Cooks. Obviously, you have to look at, Davis Mills playing quarterback at some point. I think they switched to it was just not a season that you wanted to be in Houston, right? Like, I mean, think now starting this season is like where they'll hopefully make that turnaround with D'Amico Ryans, Bobby Slowick, all those guys there. Hopefully it'll be a lot better for Houston going forward. But just, last season was just, unfortunately under Lovie Smith, not a good situation for that offense at all. Now he lands in Dallas. Like I said, they're going to be a lot better at competing. They're going to be a lot more, just aggressive on offense. It's going to suit his skill set a little bit better. You look at what happened in that offense. Dalton Schultz is surprisingly now a member of the Houston Texans, so he made the opposite switch, going from Dallas to Houston, and Brandon Cooks going from Houston to Dallas. We already talked about Ezekiel Elliott still being a free agent. There's a possibility he may resign, but just there's some changes in the offense, and obviously the big one, Kellen Moore, is no longer there. But you look at that receiver room, he automatically, I think, becomes that second option behind CeeDee Lamb. Like we talked about Michael Gallup before, just before the injury, he was a pretty dynamic supplemental receiver. After the injury, I just didn't see it enough last season. So I'm curious to see whether this offseason he'll be able to continue to build some confidence and become more of a stronger option. But for right now, I like Brandon Cooks to be that supplemental piece to CeeDee Lamb in this passing offense. I know Mike McCarthy wants to run the ball a little bit more with this change in offense here, but they're still going to have to pass because, I mean, Dallas is going to fall behind at times. Dak Prescott wants to air it. Like, he wants to prove that he can be the guy in Dallas. So I very much see them still being aggressive down the field, especially with Brandon Cooks being a speedster. CeeDee Lamb being more of that possession guy. He'll move the ball down the field and be that reception monster that you want. But Brandon Cooks is going to be that home run threat that they sort of lacked in this offense for a little bit of time. CeeDee Lamb could definitely take the top off the defense as well, but I think Brandon Cooks, that's where his sort of bread and butter is, to take that top off the defense, bring that element to speed, and sort of bring that sort of like home run threat to this offense that will probably freak out a little bit of defense to sort of let CeeDee Lamb work. And then once CeeDee Lamb is working, let Brandon Cooks sort of go over the top and score there. So currently ranked, Tad, this is going to be kind of crazy, but he is ranked in the 90s for his overall ADP. So that means he's going in the 9th round. If you're playing,
I thought you were going to say the 90s in receivers. I was going to get very excited there.
No. For overall ADP. So I mean, like I said, that's sort of targeting as far as like if you're playing in a 10-person league, that's about the 9th round there. So I mean, you look at that, and that's about where I see it.
Yeah, a little lower than I thought, but not like significantly lower.
Yeah, I saw that, and I wasn't too surprised for it because I mean, you look at what happened last season that sort of lead to his slide. You wonder whether he still has it. But like I said, I like the change in offense. I think he's going to be a little bit more involved in this offense compared to what it was in Houston. So I think he's going to get a lot more targets. So yeah, if you're targeting this guy in the 9th round, possibly the 10th round, if you're playing in a 12-person league, you may have to take him in the 8th round. But just if you're targeting him in those middle rounds there at the towards the middle to the end of your draft, that's a guy that you want as far as like, top of your bench or possibly as a flex option. Like I really like Brandon Cooks to fill both those roles. I don't think he's going to be that number 1, number 2, or number 3 option as your starting receiver, but very much I like him as a flex option. Depending on the matchup, he could be a good starter for you on a streaming basis. But yeah, right there in that sort of 8 to 10 round range, that's a perfect spot to take him. And he's going to be a good supplemental piece to your overall fantasy roster. But 100% changing from Houston to Dallas, great candidate to bounce back for sure.
I mean, this is a bit, of semantics, but I guess I'm actually a little bit higher than you on Cooks because I actually think he's a low-end wide receiver 3, a strong flex option.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, like I said, it really just depends on how much they decide to air it out. I think they're going to be a little bit more balanced compared to with Kellen Moore, where he was more aggressive through the pass. So, I mean, that can sort of lower some of those numbers. But yeah, if they fall behind a lot, then there's very much a situation where they can sort of be airing it out a lot more, lead some more targets, which then obviously ups his value for sure.
So, Amir, I want to give you a little pop quiz real quick. Who is the Cowboys? I'm not asking any stats or anything. No over under. We're not playing over under because you suck at over under. Who
I
was
do.
the Cowboys' number 2 receiver in terms of yards last year?
Last year? So
Last year.
receiver, right? Not like player.
Player. That kind of gives away the answer.
It's probably Dalton Schultz then.
Dalton Schultz. Who is the number 3 receiver or tight end?
Number 3 receiver or tight end.
If you
in
get
yards,
this, I'll
right?
be in yards. I will be very impressed if you get this.
Is it Tony Pollard?
It's Noah Brown.
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, I know.
I remember
It's
towards
impressive.
the end of the season, Tony Pollard, I think, like had 175 yards receiving in one game, if I remember correctly. So it's like that's why I thought maybe he sort of launched himself into sort of in that category. But yeah, I never would have guessed Noah Brown.
Tony Pollard finished. Hey, I nailed it. Finished at number 5 with 39 catches, 370 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But speaking of stats, let's go back to Schultz and Brown. So Schultz finished with 57 catches, 577 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Really loves that number 5. Noah Brown finished at 43 catches, 555 yards. What is with these guys at number 5? And 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, basically the entire point of me spitting out all these stats is let's take Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz, kind of smush them together. And like you said, let's lower those smushed together stats just a little bit, because I agree with you. I don't think they'll be quite as a pass-happy offense as they have been. I mean, that equals out to about 90 receptions, just under 1,000 yards, and close to 8 or 7 touchdowns. And honestly, that reception number might be a little high. But other than that, that would not shock me if that is exactly how Brandon Cooks finishes the season. And we were just talking, a little bit ago about how, just under 1,000 yards, 7 or 8 touchdowns. Those are perfect wide receiver two numbers. Yeah. And I just said that I like Brandon Cooks as a low-end wide receiver number 3. So I said it once, I'll say it again. I think it's definitely riskier than Aaron Rodgers, so good for you. It definitely carries some risk to it, but it's a good risk depending on your situation.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I want to bring up too is that Dak Prescott missed about 5 games last season, so I think that's why. So Dak Prescott,
you said Dak.
Did I say Dak? I swear I said
Dave Bautista is not the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
Drax Prescott might be more successful than Dak Prescott. At least he'd be a little bit more physical.
For sure has a stronger arm.
He'll have a lot more funnier post-game interviews too, for sure.
Oh, that would be great. That's a great bit right there.
But anyway, so Dak Prescott missed 5 games last season, right? So I think that sort of affected as far as the aggressiveness too, because obviously they played those games with Cooper Rush. I know they sort of felt like he could have been the starter based on Cowboys media, how successful they were, or whatever. I think
I so wish you should have been down here for those 2 weeks. That was a funny 2 weeks in Dallas.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely ludicrous that they were thinking
so
that. But just, if Dak Prescott can stay healthy for a majority of the season again, like if he could, only miss like about maybe 2 or 3 games, or at least play the entire 17-game schedule, then we could see a little bit more of that aggressiveness now compared to if you have to play with a backup quarterback, you sort of have to play a little bit more conservative. They may lean more on the running game, dude. Because obviously, I don't know, once we're going to talk about training camp hype, but have you seen video of Deuce Vaughn?
I'm not, but it doesn't surprise me. That dude's the TCU killer. I said like after the Big 12 championship where he almost single-handedly beat us, I hate that guy. Like he's so good. And then of course he goes to the Cowboys. So he's looking good.
He's looking sensational. Like the speed is there. The shiftiness is there. It's just like, he's definitely going to supplant, that's the word I was looking for. Malik Davis as the number 2 running back behind Tony Pollard. And if anything were to happen to Tony Pollard, I'm 100% all aboard Deuce Vaughn for sure.
100%. I think to toot our own horns here, you and I both said post-draft, which remember guys, we are your go-to information for LAFB Network draft content, including the 2024 NFL draft. Don't forget, we're previewing the NFL and fantasy football, but we'll be dropping in some little college football nuggets when it comes to the draft every now and then throughout the season. So be sure to tune in to us for the guys that your team's going to be looking out for next year. But going back to last year's draft, just to show that we know what the hell we're talking about, we both agreed at the end of last year's draft that was a very underrated pick because they got him in the 5th round. Something like that at Kansas State. And I remember saying like, God damn it, because that was such a great pick. And no, it's not. So I have not seen those videos because I avoid everything Cowboys, but it does not surprise me in the least that he looks good. God damn it. Well, because I made this comparison. Yes, it's because they both went to Kansas State and they're both small and shifty. Shut up. But I said after the draft, he legitimately looks like the next Darren Sproles. And I think that's what he's going to be. I anticipate a very long future for him because he just has that versatility where he's, how did this turn into the Deuce Vaughn podcast? Where he just has that shiftiness and that receiving ability. He's going to be good.
I was talking about how they may lead on the run game in case Dak Prescott gets hurt. So that's why I was talking about Tony Pollard, which led to Deuce Vaughn, which then led to me asking if you've seen his video. So yeah, he's been looking pretty good at training camp as well. But once again, training camp hype, maybe take it for what you want there. But just, yeah, overall, just I like Brandon Cooks to sort of be a good supplemental piece to your fantasy roster. Maybe not as a starter right away, but 100% a guy that you want on your bench and possibly your flex option as well there. So yeah, good options there. So yeah, we both listed out some good bounce back candidates. Maybe I was a little bit safer with mine. Yours were pretty good there. I definitely like JK Dobbins as well as Keenan Allen for sure. But guys, like we talked about, we still got a lot more fantasy content for you. We may be done with position rankings, but go back and listen to all those episodes. We got a lot more great content coming for you as well. Like Tad said, I mean, the college football season is going to be right around the corner too. They start 1 week before the NFL season. So, I mean, don't be surprised if we decide to do a college football preview as well, looking at that 2024 NFL draft as far as guys that you need to keep your eye on as the season goes along. Maybe dropping that content as well. But guys, any way you want to find out about all the content that we're dropping, the ticker's coming right down below. Perfect timing. Follow us on all our social media handles there. You got us on Twitter. You got me at Desai23. You got Tad at Desai94. You got the show handle at the Desai Guys. And, of course, we're on Instagram as well at the Desai Guys. So, Tad, I think the only ranked drafts graphics that we have to drop are the kicker and defense graphics. So make sure that you're following on the social media handles to get those as well. Because, hey, we talked about it on that episode. Turn back and listen to it. Kickers and defense can make a crucial difference to your overall fantasy roster. So, I mean, if you have the right ones, they make a huge difference in a given week as far as winning or losing your matchup. So for sure, check out those rankings as well. To everything that we're sort of dropping, I mean, just make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can listen right on the LAFB Network website as well. Just hit subscribe. Always be up to date with our podcast episodes. If you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, because we got a lot of great content coming there. Some things may not be always on the podcast or the YouTube. Like, I mean, when we did Tad's surprise punishment for the framed game with Chauncey, I think that was a YouTube exclusive. So I still
don't forgive you for that, Benedict Arnold.
So, I mean, guys, make sure you're subscribing on both, because we may have content that may be exclusive to one platform or the other. For the most part, they're on both. But hey, guys, you want to see our pretty faces. Like, I mean, make sure you're watching us on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe there.
That framing? That was perfect framing.
Exactly.
Right,
see Tad's weird framing, mishandles and all this stuff. And obviously Cap making surprise appearances. Like, I mean, you're not going to get that on podcast. Make sure you're watching us on YouTube to get all that stuff. Guys, we have started dropping articles on the LAFB Network website as well. So, I mean, some of the position rankings that we have done them in article form as well. So, I mean, in case you can't listen or watch us, we're dropping all those on the LAFB Network website as well. So we started with the quarterbacks. We'll obviously be going through all of those as well. So, I mean, yeah, make sure you're checking out the LAFB Network website as well for all of our fantasy content. And guys, I mean, if you're already supporting us by subscribing, listening, reading our articles, interacting with us on social media, I mean, just guys, we really just can't thank you enough.
And we actually have a somewhat exciting announcement to make, is because for the first time ever, we are telling you what is coming up on this podcast specifically. Next week, we are dropping an episode where we answer all of your fantasy football questions. We are not going to take any notes. We are completely just going to look at any of the questions you have. We may put them on the screen. Mer's more on the producer side, so we'll have to see if we can do that. We'll see. But we are looking to answer any individualized questions you have. So we are going to keep our social media open for any questions. You can drop them in the replies on Twitter. You can DM us on Twitter. You can drop them in the comments on Instagram. The LAFB Facebook page, we'll check that as well. YouTube, I check YouTube every day for the comments. So basically, any of our social media or content channels, drop a comment there if you have any type of fantasy question. It could be something like I asked Mer tonight, where it's like, hey, what stats do you look at while you draft? Like, what's your drafting strategy? What kind of draft? Should I auto draft? Which my answer is no, spoiler alert. But any type of question you have, what do you think about this player? anything that falls under the fantasy umbrella, hit us up for those questions. We will promise we will hit every single one we get. So hit us up. Look at that timing again. Twitter, @EmerDesai23, @TadDesai94, @the Desai Guys, both on Instagram or on Twitter to get your question in for next week's episode. I am so excited for that because we do this to help out you guys. So I'm going to win all my leagues this year. American shut it with the LAFB league. Al can especially shut it. But if I'm going to win all my leagues, I want to make sure you win your leagues as well. So if you want that to happen, keep listening, keep watching, but most importantly, stay safe, everyone.